1960s Goldwater era.
Yeah.
A lot of philosophers and thinkers and ideologues from that era will refer to the work of Edmund Burke, who's an 18th century philosopher statesman from Ireland. And to do a really truncated version of what he was writing about, initially he cheered on the American Revolution and was like, okay, it sucks that we had this war, but I do approve of the way that they're trying to build a civil society and protect rights and do it with as little bloodshed as possible while keeping this country together. The French Revolution happens. You think, and initially they're like, we're doing it for the same reasons as America's doing. Mm-hmm. And then the terror happens. Then aristocrats are being dragged out of their homes. Their heads are being chopped off in front of everyone. Churches are being burned down. Like mass violence and poverty and just social destruction is underway. And Burke goes, okay, yeah, change is good, but you can't do it at the expense of these institutions. You can't level society in order to get the vision and future that you want. I would rather keep these institutions that maintain the peace and restrict liberties and restrict rights and what have you, or like build institutions that allow them incrementally than moving as fast as you humanly can. And that's always been a tenet of conservatism. Like either like rewind the clock to undo what progressivism and socialism has wrought, or if you can't, slow it down as much as possible.
And I think that it's interesting because the MAGA movement, fundamentally, on those terms, is nowhere near a conservative movement. It's a revolutionary reactionary movement that really does want to like tear it all down. It's not conservative at all. It's almost anarchic in a way. It's not. I mean, it's so weird because it ties in with all these, like, you're right, generationally built movements on the right that do want to either stop or slow things down to stand athwart history, as William F. Buckley Jr. said. But they've tied themselves in with this roiling populist, like, nutjob stew that is fundamentally just has nothing to do with conservatism or preserving cultural institutions, but has to do with just like, let's just clear everything out. In a way, it's kind of more like 1917 than anything that we've seen in the last 100 years.
Yeah, and I think that's the tension within the conservative movement as well. Like, your fate is tied to this populist.
Yeah.
Your power is tied to this populist. Your reason for being is tied to this populist. And you've developed all of these tactics and tools to get the thing that you wanted 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But like now they're all here and they are being overtaken by another generation who are becoming Trumpist and Trump aligned as well. So like I've literally seen in DC, the Young Republicans Club got literally taken over by a bunch of MAGA aligned Matt Gaetz staffers.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how much these institutions are being hijacked from within. And now that you have, I don't know, the moment you have the MAGA people with control of the levers of power that have been built over time, what happens? I don't know.
Yeah. Because right now they seem a lot like the nihilists for the Big Lebowski. We believe in nothing. That's kind of the heart of Trumpism. Trump, like, you know, he puts out all these messages and he brings in the right, but fundamentally at the heart of it, he doesn't have any solid beliefs of his own, and the MAGA movement totally gloms on to like his persona and his power and not his policy. There really are no strict policies. It can vary, you know, depending on his mood. over the course of a day. And that's one of the most dangerous things about Donald Trump and this whole movement. So, yeah, I guess there aren't a lot of, there isn't a hugely positive outlook for 2024, I guess is what it comes down to.
Do you ever feel like you're cursed with knowledge? Because sometimes I feel like I'm cursed with knowledge.
Yeah. I think that being able to see this and know how people in the MAGA movement and on the far right think is maddening because you know what they're willing to do and you know how far they're willing to go. And it's very difficult to communicate that to people who have never seen it directly themselves. And it's just, I was talking to somebody about this the other night in a completely different context, because I am the father of a child with disabilities, and I am a caregiver for her. She's wonderful. She has cerebral palsy and epilepsy, and she uses a wheelchair. And as it is difficult to find people to talk to about that, because if you have not experienced the life of someone with who is a parent of a child with disabilities, like how do you communicate what that means day in and day out in terms of what you do and what you can do and what you can't do, and the experiences that your child may or may not be able to have. It's a completely different experience than a quote unquote typically developing child. And in that same way, we form these little bubbles based on what happens to us and what we assume all of the rest of the world is like. We expect our child to develop in this particular way. And similarly, if we've been associated with a particular group of people, we assume that the government is going to work in this particular way, and that democracy and that our country and that our culture should work in this particular way. And we have these bubbles on the left and the right and all sorts of places in between. And it is difficult to see into other bubbles if you have not experienced it directly yourself. So yeah, I do feel it is like a curse because it is so difficult to get people inside different bubbles together, because you have to, in some sense, experience it viscerally, and it's rare that there's a confluence of that.
Yeah.
So I think we've got our job set out for us in a big way over the next year.
Well, I will also maybe try to end this on a positive note as well. Maybe not like a positive, everything's going to be shiny and happy note, but like a comforting one. I remember shortly after January 6th, I was talking to someone who monitored extremism, and he and I were just like screaming at the phone, like, why was no one listening to us? Like, we fucking called this.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a fucking psychopath now. I'm sorry I'm swearing so much, but then he also said something that I kind of like found really comforting, which was, I would rather be angry than scared.
Yeah.
I would rather know what's happening than not know where this came from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better at least to be able to take action of some kind as opposed to just be paralyzed. At least if you have something to do, even if it's a little bit of shouting, that can be a positive thing. And if this anger can motivate us to say, we may not be looking at a democracy anymore after 2024, and that gets us to talk to a few more people, knock on a few more doors, shout on a few more call-in shows, use all caps on a few more social media posts or whatever it happens to be, then that's a positive thing. And I think that's the lesson that we have to take from our experiences, and also connect as many bubbles as we can, because if not, we're going to have a bigger bubble here in the United States that is going to pop, and it's not going to be good. Tina Nguyen is the author of the MAGA Diaries, My Surreal Adventures Inside the Right Wing and How I Got Out. Tina, thank you for getting out. Thank you for writing this, and thank you so much for being with us today on Facepalm America.
This was really, really good. Thank you so much, Beowulf.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you to Ace Elson and Rosabelle Hine for producing this program. And thank you for listening. And I would ask you, please pass this along to someone that you know. It's important that we talk to each other. And if you enjoy this program, let folks know about it that you care for and would like to give some good content to, and use it as an excuse to stay in touch. I think we always need an excuse to stay in touch. Facepalm America is where you can find out more about the program. And until next time, enjoy the day.